Hi everyone, it's Sister Folk and welcome to your optional instructor critique video for your creative ads. I'm going to go ahead and go in the order that is listed here as you posted onto your creative ad drafts. First of all, I do want to do a few reminders for what I'll be looking for and grading on for the final assignment. Okay, I think most of you understand you need to have two images blended together that have some sort of symbolic visual communication. What does this mean? This means instead of saying, these sheets are really soft, buy them, you have a sheet that is a pillow, right? And you blend an image of a pillow with the image of a sheet. And so that's kind of hopefully one of the goals of this assignment, that you understand it should have some kind of nuanced meaning. It shouldn't be super straightforward. There should be some reason why you took these two images and used Photoshop to put them together. Be sure you add in the company logo. We can do that because we're an online course for educational purposes. You can't do that in your normal life or in your business, as just a reminder. Okay, and then for your written content, make sure you have all three of these things: a headline, body copy, and a call to action. Now, if you have two sizes down here, I'm okay if you change this body copy so it's not two sentences. If you have a really small ad, sometimes you're not going to be able to fit a few sentences on it. So if you got TV static ad, and you have these two sizes that you're doing, and maybe you have magazine ad and TV static ad, you need to change some of the wording, please feel free to do that. That leads into the next thing. Be sure you include two of your designs and that the sizes are modified when you turn them in. Okay, the same design, two different sizes. It doesn't have to be exactly the same. Like I just mentioned, you could take out some words, you can change the size of things, make it look the best it visually can with a different size. And that's one of the main goals and one of the things you'll actually be doing quite a bit if you become a professional designer. Okay, let's go ahead and jump over and start doing some critiques. I believe, let's see, Amanda, Kaylee, Adam, I think you're the first one that opted in. Okay, so let's see. Feel like you're printing on Benjamins. Okay, so I'm assuming that you are brother at your side. Your product is this printer, and this is the dollar bill that you've kind of photoshopped in there, so it looks nice. I would try to clean up right here. If you could go back in there a little bit more, see how you have this dark shadow and it's popping a little bit too much on this background, drawing attention to the fact that this was photoshopped. You don't notice it as much over here, even though this is kind of a rough edge too. And actually, you're probably missing a little bit of the printer tray. So maybe you could go back in and try to select that, because I think probably didn't look like that on the original. But you don't notice it as much over here because the background is dark, but it really pops over here against this white background. Besides that, you've done a pretty good job with your selection. I really like your font choices. This is great. This color scheme is good. I like that as well. You might play around with contrast a little bit more. Maybe with this image, you could make it even larger. Or you could make this title larger, because I will still be grading based on those design principles. Okay, so that's one thing I would probably work on. Here is the logo, which you did a good job getting that on here. Overall, this is a really great start to the ad. Be sure you have two different sizes, and I'd probably just refine your selection on this a little bit on the outer edge of the printer. You could maybe add a slight drop shadow to it. And generally, we have a rule that you don't just have any item floating in space if it doesn't have a reason to be. So usually you would have some kind of element in the background that this printer would be setting on. For example, visually, you could maybe raise this kind of lighter background up a little bit. So you have a visual connection between this printer. Instead of it's just floating, it's resting on an element. And so you may play around with that, see if it looks good. If maybe you're able to bump this up a little bit, then you would have enough room for this background to be extended. Okay. But besides that, just refining some of these edges. Over here, it's starting to look a little bit pixelated, but I think that's because of the selection. I don't think that's because of the actual image, because over here it looks more crisp. Okay, so I would just continue to work on refining this and maybe upping the contrast a little bit. Okay, so great job, Adam. Looking forward to seeing your final. Okay, let's move on to Connie. I believe you opted in. Great. Okay, and you had this was one of your ideas that you put in on your creative ideas assignment, I remember. One weird thing that's standing out to me is this dotted line around the soap. I'm wondering what this is. Was this the outside edge of your original soap image, maybe? If so, you might need to go in and with your selection tool set to 0 on the feather, you may need to come in and select this edge and delete it when you have your ivory soap layer selected. It looks a bit like it's just some weird kind of dotted line. So if that's the case, try to select it and delete it because it's distracting a little bit from this. And I think what you went with was the fact that this ivory soap is maybe the piece that you're moving around the board. I was thinking it was going to be your actual go box on the board, but this is fine. This kind of looks like it's the element that's moving around the board. Which I'm trying to think if that makes sense with your headline. The soap itself is starting over clean. It's making me wonder from a just messaging perspective, why is the soap the one moving around the board? I know the soap is making you start over clean, but it might be too tricky to have it actual really match the theme by having like a person move around the board and the ivory soap being the board or something that might be getting too complicated. So I understand if this is your choice because it was a little bit easier one of to figure out how to navigate and how to actually do. So you did a good job with the selection. It looks really good down here. I'm not sure if this drop shadow was already here, but if not, that's good because it adds to it. I might even add a little bit more of a softening of the edge to your ivory soap bar and a little bit of a drop shadow even more. So it looks like it's really setting on this board all the way around, and that would kind of hide maybe whatever this element was that was in the background already. And then another thing is I think it's a little bit too much going on down here with the really bright red and then the yellow. So I would probably move this yellow text up here and see if you can maybe darken this part of the image. See how it's already blurred out? You could darken it a little bit more too. And then your messaging wouldn't be conflicting with this letter. You could make these words even smaller if you wanted to. Keep the contrast here because I like how you have a good contrast, but maybe start over clean, never too dirty, never too late. Make sure you're consistent. See, you have dirty capitalized, but late isn't. So just keep it consistent with whatever choice you decide to make. And then I would play around maybe a little bit more with the typefaces. Maybe you're trying to match the ones that are on the actual soap. If you're doing that, maybe keep this one, but try to come up with something a little bit different for this. The yellow really pops, but we have a rule with our drop shadows. The rule is keep it light and keep it tight. So see how dark this is? I would lighten that up a little bit and I would pull it in a little bit more, and that's going to help your drop shadow look like it's more modern as opposed to drop shadows from the 80s or 90s when they looked a little bit more like this. Okay. Another thing is, if at all possible, if you can find the Ivory Soap logo that does not have this white background, that would be super, super helpful. So let's see, Ivory Soap logo, no background. You can do kind of an image search like this. And then let's see. You're going to be looking for one that has this kind of hashtag behind it. Oh, is this the actual, this might be the actual bar you used. So see if you can find one like that. I know one of the instructors that I teach with had posted a link to a site that had a bunch of logos that you could download. Wondering if Ivory Soap might be on one of those. Creative Commons. I might need to look around. Maybe I'll try and post it for you as a link if I can find that logo. Whoops. On another site, but having the background white is a little bit detracting. You can just open this in Photoshop and select the white background and delete it as well, which is a little bit of an extra step, but it would help it look even more professional to have that background taken away. Speaking of backgrounds, this background looks a little bit dirty, so I would try to brighten this up. So in Photoshop, you can go into levels and brighten it up a little bit so your whites are a little bit whiter, and it's going to help it look a little bit more modern as well. Okay, so my headline is also my call to action. Do I need to separate those? Add more, start over, clean? No, I think that's okay. I think it makes sense that you're saying this is what you should do. Call to action doesn't necessarily need to be buy this bar of soap. That's implied. So I think your call to action is just fine. Okay. Thanks, Connie. I look forward to seeing what you decide to do for some of those final changes. Okay, let's see, Christopher, you are next. All right. I was just reading Amanda's assignment. Okay, so one of the things is Amanda mentioned the girl doesn't fit in because she looks young or scared, which may be true. I'm also going to say it's not going to work because I can tell that this image was someone's who is not allowing you to use it for free because it has these watermarks on it. So you need to be sure to go into one of the sites that are okay to use, like you can Google Creative Commons, photography, okay? And you can come into any of these and try to see if you can do a search that will allow you to use one of these images for free. Google has a good resource for free images. A site I like to use is FreePic, and you can come in here to their photos and type in girl. Maybe you don't want it to be scared, but maybe you want it to be girl on couch or something. And then you could go through. I know it takes a long time to do this and to find one that matches exactly, especially if you want her to look kind of annoyed or frustrated. Okay, so like maybe something like this could work better. Okay, so try to do something like that because this is obviously a big no-no. When you can see the watermark, it instantly tells me that this is not legally being used, which is obviously a huge problem. Okay. Your couch looks like you did a really good job with the selection. I like that. The guy, I think he needs a little bit more work. You got to come in and kind of clean up his leg here. Some parts look really good, like this looks nice, but then his forehead and his nose, this definitely shouldn't look like that on his forehead. So I would try to refine that a little bit. You could add a little bit of a drop shadow to him, and that will help him kind of blend in with the actual couch. And I might maybe make the couch a little bit bigger. It looks like he's a little bit too proportionally large for it. Um, and then the other thing is, I'm sure you haven't just got to this point, but remember, you definitely need to have your logo and those three things that we mentioned: an original and creative headline, body copy, and a call to action. Okay, so make sure you have those on there, and some cool, creative, contrasting typography. You could maybe place it up here, right aligned, and have your logo down here aligned with it too, to remind me that you're remembering those design principles that we went over. Okay, so I like where you're going. I definitely level the white space on the page. I think it really helps it look like a creative ad because you have that amount of white space. Also, I play around a little bit more with the squigglies. Maybe instead you could Google images. You could say, I don't know if this is going to come up with anything. No, smelly. Let's see. Something like this. These lines, obviously not the baby poop underneath it, but something that looks a little bit more professional with the way it's done would probably be helpful. Now, I will say on free pick, these, if it says we offer you sponsored files, these are ones you're going to need to pay for. So you always kind of want to scroll down. To underneath these sponsored results, and anything usually with this S is free. Okay, so you could kind of look around, see if you can find something. And premium users, that premium, you're going to have to pay for that too. Okay, so this is one resource you could choose. Also remember, you can just Google Creative Commons photography, and that'll show you a few things that could be helpful too. Because these squiggly lines don't look the most professional. All right, so continue to work on that. I look forward to seeing what you come up with, Christopher. Great job. Okay, Amanda, Marin, Brooke. Okay, Brooke, you opted in. I'm guessing these are your two different sizes. Oh, and yep, this one is pretty small, so I'm going to see if the other one is larger. Good. Okay. First of all, I like that you have this really kind of attention-grabbing background. I think you did a really good job on your selection of the hammer. This looks really well done. I'd go in and clean up this top line of your Thor hammer, and try to make it just look as equally well selected as you have this. I remember on your initial creative idea, I think you were going to have like this be a shadow of that, which I think would make a little bit more sense, because right now they're just kind of placed in proximity to one another, but I don't quite understand how they relate. Maybe, if you have the hammer right here on the most intense part of the lightning bolt, and then you have this underneath it kind of looking like a shadow, and add a drop shadow to this so it looks like that's the reflection of it, and the hammer is being illuminated from behind by this light, and then the shadow is Thor's hammer. I think that would make a little bit more sense. This is one of those no-no fonts, and so I definitely go back in and change this. It's just pretty much overused. It's very similar to the papyrus one. I don't think this one is the papyrus. I can't remember what it's called, but it's one that is overused as well. So I would change this up. And then I would play around with your alignment. You have this left aligned, but it's not aligned with anything in proximity to the page. And then this is just kind of stuck down here. So instead, I'd change this font to something equally appealing and attention grabbing, but just a different font, and probably put that up here And then the power in your universe, you could have that tucked onto this cloud right here and right aligned with the H. So you have a nice strong line down this page. And then your DeWalt logo, you could have it right aligned with that as well. Okay, so play around with the alignment a little bit more so you can get everything looking the way that you need it to be. But you're off to a good start with these selections. Okay, thanks, Brooke. All right, let's see, Joshua. Okay. I think you're also off to a good start. I would continue to refine this edge on your bodybuilder. See how here you can see the dark. And if he was actually on the beach, you probably wouldn't have this dark background there. And so it's pretty apparent that that's from a selection. So go in, zoom in super close, use that selection tool. I might even hand draw it with that selection tool to get these dark little splotches away. It looks pretty good around his head, especially. And then I might consider making these smaller because it's a little bit weird that they don't fit in his hands. See how they're overlapping, like his thumb is actually going into the tool. So I would probably make the tool a little bit smaller so it looks like it's genuinely sitting in his hands. This side is a little bit better, but if you make it smaller, I think that would kind of make it make a little bit more sense. I'd definitely change up your fonts. You don't have any contrasting font on the page, which is one of the rules of good typography. And you also need to remember to add in the logo. So be sure you get the logo on the page somewhere. Any adventure starts with good tools. Pick up some tools for your set today. Okay, I'd like to know a little bit more. You need to be a little bit more detailed on your call to action. Like, what is this tool? Where do I buy it? What is it called? So these are like needle nose pliers, right? So you can say any adventure starts with good tools. And then maybe something about why you have this bodybuilder here. You need to tie him on. You could say like any strong, let's see, I'm trying to come up with a slogan here off the top of my head. Strong men, strong tools, and then build your, or build your body, build your toolbox, something like that. And then you could have, and that's kind of your call to action. And so then you could say, your adventure starts with DeWalt needle nose pliers or whatever, something like that. And then you have your logo. Maybe it's kind of hard to figure out a good place for your logo. Really, the only place that might sit well is up here or over here, which might be okay because then you could have your words kind of in this white space of the clouds. Okay, so play around a little bit more with where you're placing your words. Be sure to find a nice place for your logo and then switch up these fonts so they're contrasting. Give me something that is maybe a little bit more this is a classic font, but maybe pair it with something that looks a little bit more modern, like a nice sans serif. And maybe try to work in some of this yellow from the color here on these pliers. That might be nice too. Okay, so continue to play around with those things so you have a really cohesive message. Why is this guy pulling himself up on the beach with pliers? I'm still not totally sure. So refine that a little bit. Feel free to email me if you want to bounce around ideas, and we can do that. Okay, but you're off to a good start. This selection especially looks really good. So keep on working at that. Okay, thanks, Joshua. All right, and then Annie, I think you're the last one who opted in. Okay, so sleep on a bedding everyone will love. Okay, so I can't quite tell. I'm guessing you photoshopped these guys in, the doggies, because the feet look like they were already there, which is good. And then I'm not sure if you placed this logo here. If you did, that's great. It looks really nice because it has a clear background, so that's good. This font, I think we need to revisit going to defont.com and looking for more creative modern ones. This is a default one on Word. It's one that people select all the time. And so this is a nice, really strong, contemporary looking logo, and this instantly dates it. Okay, so play around, try to find something that will contrast still, a nice maybe script or handwritten one, defont.com. But definitely not that one that's there. Maybe you have this, that, any of these, especially something like this might look really nice, or this might look really nice, to kind of elevate this font so it matches the nice modern look of this one. And then I think you may need to add a little bit more writing in order to be sure to hit these three things. So just make sure you have these three there. And this size is pretty small, so it might be a little bit hard to fit them all in this size, but on your bigger one, make sure you're doing all of those things so I can give you credit for them as a whole. And then the other problem is I see that you said it maybe is a little bit too literal, and I think you're right. Try to think about what you could do. Maybe instead of 2 dogs, you have, you know, a bunch. Or if you're still going to sleep on bedding, everyone will love. Um, that's a pretty straightforward message. So try to figure out what you could do to add a little bit of a creative flair to it, in terms of the messaging and also how you're blending your images together. Okay, so I would just keep on working on those things. And I think you're heading in the right direction, though. You have a few things that are working well. The background image is nice, and then that logo is good where it's placed. So just keep on working on your typography, especially, and then how you're going to make that ad a symbolic message that is being carried through with 2 images. Okay, thanks, Annie. All right, I think that is it for everyone in this section right now. So everybody have a good night. Thanks. Uh-oh. Here we go. That took forever. Okay, bye now.